All right, welcome back to the Manument Podcast here with Glenn Johnson, retired investment advisor at Jabez Financial and jabezfinancial.com. And you can also get our past episodes on the manumentpodcast.com. We definitely want you to bookmark, subscribe, like, and share those. And I'm Doug Turnbull, your co-host here. And Glenn, we're recording this on a Friday. It doesn't matter what time of year. People love Fridays, all right? But nothing could be a buzzkill on a Friday in the office like technological gremlins. It took us about 10 minutes to get logged in or so here with each other today. And I see you laughing and smiling there about that. So I'm sorry that left you hanging. But Glenn, I bet for you doing this over 2 decades, you've seen technology evolve so much and how different clients come to Jabez Financial and just try to plan their retirement. I mean, it used to be a lot of physical spreadsheets before we had Excel, right?
Oh my gosh. I remember going to meet clients and getting directions on how to go get to their house over the phone. It was pre-MapQuest. And, actually just last week we were doing a dinner seminar and we talked about, remember life before cell phones? And has life really gotten better? So I'm learning with the technology.
What's great about it though is although you never can guarantee predictability, right? We try to stay away from the G word. You can't guarantee predictability. There's certainly a lot of handwriting errors, so to speak, or carry the one errors that get eliminated now by having spreadsheets and things like that, or maybe even algorithms to help streamline some of the process that probably would take 5 people to do 20 years ago when you start 20 plus years ago when you started.
That's right. That's right.
So we've had different seasons in technology here, and today we're going to talk about different financial seasons. We're actually going to do a little 2-part mini-series, a couplet, if you will, if you're into poetry, okay? A 2-part mini-series on retirement seasons. And in this first one, we're going to talk about how the youth, all the way from childhood to young adult to middle age, I'm right on the cusp of that, I guess, at 38 years old, to retirement, to estate planning, and how those interface with some of the things that slow up and speed up how quickly people are able to save money. So I love to talk about that because you talk about specifically, Glenn, here, and you and your team at Jabez Financial and jabezfinancial.com do, of spending, saving, and distractions and how that interacts with each generation.
Yes. And, I remember when I was in my early 20s, a mentor of mine was telling me, he says, people go through this life, when they're in their 20s and they've got $50 in their pocket, they're going to have a good weekend. And then when they're, when they're in their 30s,
make it $100 after inflation now. Okay?
Oh yeah, right.
150.
But then when they're in their 30s, they're getting married, having a family, having kids, buying a house, buying cars. They're accumulating all this stuff. And then in their 40s, they get to the point where, okay, we're really going to start paying off these debts. Now we're going to pay the mortgage down, pay off the cars, pay cash for them, make sure all the credit cards are gone. And 50s come along and say, all right, now we're really going to start saving for retirement. Oh yeah, the kids' college education, we'll pay for that too. But then 60s, retirement, what happened?
It's all gone. Yeah, we hope it's not all gone.
Yeah, and and I'm glad I had those mentors, because a good mentor will see the pit holes in your plan or the potholes in your plan before you get there. And when we can trust their judgment on the advice that they give, we're able to steer around them.
Who was somebody that mentored you? Because you've been doing this through multiple seasons by doing this over 22, 23 years. And I'm not going to try to spitball your age or anything, but I see you're in one of those seasons and you've gone through maybe 2 or 3 of these since you started. You've been a financial mentor to people while you've probably also needed a mentor. So who helped guide Mr. Jabez? All right. Who helped guide Glenn Johnson?
Oh gosh, I could give you a list of different men and women as well, and married couples that invested selflessly into me. And like I said, some of them have passed away and some of them are still around. But the fact that I've pursued the knowledge that they had, and it was great. The relationships that I was able to develop over those years. See, I paid attention to what they had to say, and I think because I was implementing the wisdom that they shared with me, inspired them to give me more.
As somebody who has mentored people and been mentored in my case, there is nothing that encourages me to mentor more than when you see a mentee do just a little bit of it. Then
Yes,
and I mean, part of it, you want to see the results. That's a selfish thing in us. You want to see the results. But when a mentee does just a little bit, you go, okay, they're ready for more. They're ready for a little more advice. This is worth my time.
that's right. And I was hungry for it. I had an obsession for wisdom in my early 20s. And so I wanted more of it and I wanted more of it. And I understanding that when accumulating that knowledge and implementing those new things, it doesn't come without pain. It doesn't come without heartache. But at the end of the day, it's worth it. And life gets better. And that's why I think in the last episode, we were talking about how life getting better as our ability to handle adversities increase.
Yes.
Well, we have to recognize what season we're in and what obstacles that we're facing during that time. And, that brings us to, we were talking about how if you chunk out major seasons, you've got your youth, young adult, middle-aged, and then going into retirement, then settling your estate. So each one of those seasons will have different times where you'll go through where you'll have a spending season and you'll feel like money's going out faster than it can come in. And it's overwhelming. And you think, oh my gosh, how could I have spent more in the last 3 months than I made in the last 2 years?
And sometimes it's just life events that happen. It's not just going on an extravagant vacation. You may have to do a roof, a water heater, and have had health issues all in the same
That's
short
right.
time.
And so you think about that and you think, oh my gosh, this isn't sustainable. And people they throw up their hands, they give up hope, and they're like, oh, forget it. And so that it can be emotionally overwhelming during those seasons.
It really can. I've had times, I'm 38 years old. I'm right at like I said, the cusp of the middle-age one. And I'm going, oh my God, am I so terrible at finances that I've used all of this bucket up? But it's like, no, just this particular one. You had a couple of good times over here, and then you also had this major expense. You replaced some windows or had a surgery. And I guess, do you coach people when people are really stuck in the tactical, right? They're stuck in, oh my God, what's happening in the next 6 months? Do you coach them to go, wait a second, let's be strategic, zoom out a little bit. It's not as bad as you think.
That's right. And just like there's times when it's not as bad as they think, there's also times when it's not as good as they think.
See, what would an example of that be? Like, is it just exactly the reverse of what I said? Or do you have like a story of someone who thought they were rolling in it and then you made them realize, no, sir,
sure.
having only $100,000 for retirement is probably not going to do it?
I remember years ago, I was talking with a client. He's got a job with a big company locally, and he had a great salary and he was making 3 times more money than he ever made in his life. And he thought, well, you know what? At this rate, I've got these expenses. I'm able to save all this money. I'm going to retire with $2 million by the time I'm 35. This is great. And I thought, well, right now it is. So there's times when we land that great job or business takes off, or we're making more money than we've ever made before, and we're still having the expenses that we used to have when our income was far less. And we think, you know what? Now I've got it. I'm on track. It's not going to take me any time at long to achieve where I want to get to, where I want to go. And people can develop unrealistic expectations at that point. And that happened even in the economy during the late 90s. People got
the big dot-com boom, yeah.
People got so excited that say, well, at this rate, all I have to do is work 3 more years and I'll be able to retire, and the market's still going to pay me 20% a year and everything's going to be great. But it was just a season.
Financial seasons, indeed.
Right.
So let's round it back to what your team at JBest Financial could do. And we encourage anybody listening to schedule that first conversation, if you haven't already, at jbestfinancial.com. So somebody comes to you, let's not say it's the typical retirement age. Let's say it's someone a little before, because we've talked a little bit about people that are a little hasty with this. They think they're in a great season. They come, maybe they've just inherited something, had a great business. They're maybe 50 years old and think they can retire 10 years early. That seems kind of attainable, right? So what would you say to them, and what would you look at?
Right. And that's not an uncommon scenario right now, because we're just coming off an exceptional bull run. Ever since 2009, the Fed has been printing money like it's been going out of style. People have made a fortune since 2009 to today. And so you find people that are in their 50s, mid 50s, late 50s, they just experienced during their top earning years, during their good saving years, they rode the market up. And it's kind of like they took all this money, they went to the casino, they gambled, and they won. And there is something that comes next. And that's why I say at that point, walk away from the table.
What do you encourage them to do instead? How do they walk away from the table and what do they plan for? Because all good things come to a temporary end, at least.
That's right. And so this is where, when we realize that, okay, it's kind of like that season of saving during those years. Is for the people that are in their 50s, they've done well. They've accumulated a significant amount of wealth over the last 10, 15 years, but we're going into a different economic cycle next. And so if they go into that next economic cycle with the same expectations of the last 10 years financially repeating themselves, they could be gravely disappointed and put themselves in tremendous financial hardship.
And I bet also, too, if they're starting to reap from those capital gains of a bull market, then there's also taxes to be paid and things that people don't think about when they have to start drawing on that, right?
That's right. There's a time for some protection against losses. Let the market correct. And to have the idea that the market's still going to continue to produce massive returns like the Magnificent Seven have, it's just not a realistic expectation. And I believe when I sit down and I talk with people, they kind of know in their guts that this isn't sustainable. But there's a difference between having that feeling in your gut that, okay, this market's peaked out. I've done really well. But there's that still part that hangs on that says, you know what, I bet there's some more. But realistically speaking, when we're talking about managing the dollars that have to last you the rest of your life, it becomes increasingly important to become more and more responsible with it.
Yeah.
And this is where people may start to take an interest and say, well, maybe there is something I should do. And I can say with absolute certainty, there are things you can do.
What is one last thing here before we wrap up this episode about financial seasons, or part one of financial seasons? What would you say now if you had a younger client, somebody that's younger than your median age that attends Jabez Financial, somebody that maybe is in their 30s or late 20s and has had some success, or if you just ran into them on the street or at church? I know you're very involved in church. What would you say to them right now, having seen every version of this?
Don't be over anxious. Don't be over anxious, especially for somebody that's in their 20s or 30s. They've just they've heard the stories about how much money people have made in the stock market. And they say, you know what? I'm young. I'm ready to assume risk. The market's great. And they can be overly enthusiastic to throw all of it in there. However, even though you're young, when is there a good season to lose money? Okay. So this is where, even if you're younger, that doesn't mean that you should be exposing yourself to that much risk given the market conditions that we have right now.
Don't be emotional about it, whether it's a big gain or a big loss.
Don't get over anxious. Don't get over anxious. Make sure you get in at the right time. Yeah. Yes, it's the right season of your life. However, it's a different economic season. And that's where we have to look at not just what stage in life am I in, what economic cycle is our economy in?
We're queuing up the Birds or Bob Dylan, whichever version you like. Every season, turn, or just opening the book of Ecclesiastes. Either way,
yes.
Knowing that hovel, it's all smoke. It all changes. It all changes very quickly. Well, look, get some more great advice like this from Glenn Johnson and his team. He's a registered investment advisor at Jabez Financial. You can go to jabezfinancial.com or the manumitpodcast.com. Either way, you can get past episodes, like, subscribe, and share. And keep in mind that not only does Glenn spit out great verbs about finance here on the Manumit Podcast, but he's also written for Forbes and other publications. The man knows what he's talking about. And Glenn, I look forward to hearing part two.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much, Glenn, and everybody listening to the Manumit Podcast with Glenn Johnson.
Investment advisory services offered through Jabez Financial, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. Registration is not an endorsement by securities regulators. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities, offered through Glenn Johnson Connecticut Insurance, license number 4628409. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by Jabez Financial, LLC. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. Jabez Financial, LLC is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Jabez Financial, LLC is licensed in your state, please call 860-390-0093.